I'm Alexakis from the band Everclear, and you're listening to the Rad Dad Show.
Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Thank you so much for
Thanks
joining
for
me
having
on
me.
the.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for joining me today on the Rad Dad Show. I'm going to start by asking, who are you?
My name is Alexakis. I'm an Aries. I like long walks on the beach and and alcohol-free pina coladas. No, I'm the lead singer and guitar player and founder of the band Everclear. We were a big band back in the '90s, and we still have a pretty good following now. And we're coming to Edmonton next week, and pretty stoked to be a guy who's 61 years old. I'm almost 34 years sober. I'll be 34 years
Good for
sober
you.
next Thursday. Thank you. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis about 7 years ago. I had it at that time. They thought I'd had it for about 15 to 20. So it's something that I've learned to live with my life. So I'm 61 with MS, sober, and I play rock and roll almost every week, if not every night. And I have a wonderful life. But one of my main priorities in life is being father to my two daughters. And my eldest daughter's grown up and married and gone away, but my 15-year-old is in the other room, and she's wonderful, but there's a lot of work.
Yeah, kids are a lot of work, but
Yeah,
lots of
it's all right.
positives that come with it, right?
Yeah, I was way more work. I was so much trouble, man. At 15, I was in and out of like the local juvenile hall, JV, or where they put juvenile delinquents is what they called us.
Right.
But yeah, I should have been put away for a long time, but I don't know how I got away with it. But my daughter is pretty awesome comparatively. She's getting straight A's in school, just finished her year 9, first year of high school, and grade 9. And we're just looking forward to a wonderful summer. And
Well,
I leave tonight to go play a show on the East Coast, and that's kind of my life these days. Is I'm playing most weekends. I'm gone at least one day, if not 2 or 3 days. But it's I feel blessed for the income and for the being able to keep my guys working. All my guys do this as their only job. They don't have day jobs, and just about everybody owns their own house or condo. So how great the guys in their 50s and 60s can play rock and roll and make a living and be parents. And my bass player, who's 57 going on, he'll be 58 in November, has a 3-year-old.
wow.
He started late. He's got a little girl, and she's a pistol, man.
Yeah, it's an amazing age, that age for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it changes. I'm sure you've sort of seen that. You've got an older daughter, so all
Mhm.
grown up, and then you've got one, in the teens now.
Very different personalities. Very different
Interesting.
personality. Yeah, it is interesting. Well, you've got a 4 and a 7-year-old.
Yep.
Are they very similar? Or are they different?
No, they actually are quite different. So it's funny, like, you think about that nature versus nurture
Yeah.
discussion, and it's like I can't figure it out. I'm not really sure.
It's not something that you can figure out.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like when there's 2 children within, it's like one takes after the mom more and one takes after the dad more.
Yeah.
In some ways, but they might look like the other one, more. It's weird. And every now and then, I don't know if you see this, but my daughter will laugh and she'll look just like my mom, who
Yeah.
she
Isn't that
never
funny?
met. My mom had passed before she was born. And I'm like, wow. And my wife would be like, God, she looked like Eleanor. I go, I know, man. It's
That's
crazy.
so funny. Yeah.
There's-
It is that way with my kids too. My oldest is kind of like a spitting image of me, and then the youngest is really a lot like my wife. So yeah, it's just funny. And personality wise, I mean, I can't, yeah, like you said, I can't figure it out. But that's the joy of it, right? Like just watching
Right.
them grow and become their own little
Yeah.
person, even at that young age, is really interesting.
It is really interesting, and you're right. It'd be so boring if it was more predictable, right? Even though sometimes you're going to be pulling your hair out. We're dealing with stuff with going to school next year, and this girl that used to bully my daughter
Yeah.
is transferring to that school, and we're trying to figure out what to do because I'm not going to allow it. It's just not going to happen. That bullying is not going to happen again, and I'm going to. So, but I have to deal with this. My wife has to deal with this, and I come from a gangster background. I grew up in a housing project. My way of dealing with it is bad.
Right.
That's how I want to deal with it, but I can't do that. So I got to I got to walk into the principal's office and have a discussion and use I statements and not make threatening, you know.
Control the emotions,
Yeah,
right?
but think about it. You've got two little girls. They have a 50-50 chance of bullying somebody someday or being bullied.
Right.
How are you going to deal with that? It's like
I
it
know.
it brings out parts of you that you didn't know were there
I know.
and you don't like very much because it's tribal. You're messing with your tribe.
Yeah.
That's your child.
Yeah,
And
there's an instinct to protect, right?
absolutely. It goes beyond instinct. It goes into just kill mode for me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You kind of brought up a couple times now. And this is one of the reasons I'm really interested to talk to you too, is you've been very open about your childhood and how it, was difficult in lots of different ways. Your
Was what it was.
yeah, and relationship with your dad. I mean, you've got a song, "Father of Mine." I think that's pretty autobiographical, and
That one is.
yeah. And I'm curious, like, how do you, how have you taken that and learned from those experiences that you had as a kid and applied that as a parent now for you?
Um, well, I don't know if I apply them. I try to avoid a lot of I think in life, the learning curve is not just learning the things that were done right, but learning and acknowledging the things that were done wrong and
Right.
learning ways to avoid those things before they happen, to go back before it and set the ground. And I think a strong foundation of love and understanding and soft discipline. I'm not talking about hitting or threats or
Yeah.
anything like that, but just teaching children where the lines are. And I think most kids feel safe when they know what the rules are and what the lines are and what they're supposed to do, especially as they get into the adolescent years. You haven't experienced that yet.
Right. I
Wow.
keep hearing
Yeah.
it's coming.
It's coming, man. I tell men, being the father of a daughter, your daughter, you are the king. You are the king from the ages of 2 to the ages of like 12 to 14. And then you're not anymore.
So what does that look
And
like? What does that transition look like for you as a dad? Like what are you feeling as that changes? Because I really do feel that way right now. It's they get home from school and it's daddy, 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 and
daddy, yeah.
yeah, and
It's great. And every man thinks, not my kid. Yeah,
yeah,
the other people.
yeah,
I'm doing it right. No, look at this. No, that's not going to happen. And it always happens. Um, what does it look like? I mean, it sucks, it's like one day you're the king and the next day you're invisible.
yeah,
Um, and that's hard for most people. For people like me who have addictive behaviors and like attention, and anyone who's in a band that says they don't like attention, lying to themselves or lying to the world, or both. That's one of the reasons we do it. We need that. We're extroverts. We need that kind of back
Like
and forth. Validation in a lot of ways, yeah. And when your children treat you with that kind of exaltation, adoration, it makes you feel validated.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel like you're cooler than you really are. And then the reality sits in when they turn into teenagers, and they're like, you're like, no, baby, don't do that. No, sweetie, will you take off your headphones? I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. You know, that you start getting into discussions like that. And kids can talk to you in a way that if a grown man talked to me on the street like that, he wouldn't do it.
Right. Right.
He just
there would be a consequence.
because he know that it's gonna turn into fisticuffs to talk like that to any man. And I hear my daughter's pretty great. She doesn't do it too much, but sometimes she gets a little lippy with her mom, and I don't like it.
Well, this is a part of it too. Like,
it is.
I've always, it's funny. The first place we kind of learn that behavior of like kind of not treating people well is with the people we love the most. Isn't that interesting? Like, you kind of feel so comfortable with
because you feel
your
safe.
family that you're not going to have those consequences if you treat people really terrible. We do it with our our partners too, and those kinds of things. You look back after, why would I say that? Why did I do that? Right? And you kind of, it's interesting to see that, and then try and have some perspective on it probably with your kids, that okay, this isn't personal really, this is coming from somewhere else.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a pharmacist.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm other than playing in the rock band, I'm a certified life coach, and I deal with mostly people who are in the creative industries, and people, and as well as people who are in recovery. But a lot of that are people who are, parents and have family dynamics to go along with all the rest of it, and a lot what you're saying is what I have experienced, and it's something that it's different for everybody, but you have to have guidelines to go by, at least to start with, and treating people, it comes to old school stuff, whether you're religious or spiritual or not, what they call the golden rule of treating other people the way you would like to be treated is just smart behavior, right? But it doesn't always get the result. And with teenagers or adolescents, it doesn't necessarily get the result that you will with an adult. You walk into a room and there's a guy there, and you look at each other and you go, "Good morning, how you doing?" And you put your hand out, he shakes your hand. All right. That goes way back to the caveman days to show that I don't have a weapon, and my hand's not a fist. I don't mean you any harm. That's sociology that goes back 100,000 years or more. And those lessons we've learned through socialization, correct? Growing up. Our children have no idea. Your 7-year-old is starting to get socialized pretty well from school. Your 4-year-old is, and I don't say this in any insulting way, I say this about my own child. At that age, they're damn near wild animals.
Yep.
It's like you try to teach them rules, they're like, what? No, me.
You're domesticating them. Yeah.
Exactly. You're domesticating, because everything in their genetics is saying, oh, I like that. I want all that.
Yeah.
I want all that. No, we must share. We got to share. No,
what are you talking about?
That has nothing to do with the genetic human experience. That is the learned and socialized human experience of sharing, because that will propel the collective and make the whole tribe safe and the family safe and the community safe. And if we can share ideas and share things, which I love that idea. And I'm a big part of it. I try to be of service as much as possible, not just a large part due to my, my recovery, which I'm very strong in. It's almost, like I said, almost 34 years, but also just as a dad, when you have children, I don't want to see any child hungry. I don't want to see any child hurting. That hurts me, I don't want to see it. And then I look at people and people like unhoused people that live on the street, and I think they're somebody's baby.
Yes.
They were somebody's baby at one time. That woman, that man, they weren't meant to grow up to be like that. Bad things happen to them.
Yeah.
And they made bad choices, I'm sure, but bad things also happen.
Who doesn't make bad choices, right? But in certain circumstances, your consequences are worse, right? Some people start out, further back from the starting line, right? And it's that compassion and empathy that you have to have for your fellow man, fellow human, right? That's something
you'd like to think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to talk about, but there's lots of people it doesn't seem like, that's as easy to do. I know, over the years, that's something you've been passionate about. You've spoken out for LGBTQ rights. You've spoken out for, stigma around drug use, and things like that. And it sounds like, through your coaching, which is really cool. Actually, we can maybe come back to that in a little bit. I did some coaching courses last year, so I know a little bit about how that works. And I think, like, how do you apply that, or how do you teach that to your kids, I guess? Like, how important is that in your discussions with your kids about empathy and caring and standing up for what's right and helping people? Because that seems to be something that's so important to you.
Well, I think a lot of what children learn, they learn from their parents, from their siblings, and from their family and their tribe, and then, and a sort of local, like, community of friends and stuff. That's what I'm calling the tribe. And then the community around them, school, organizations, church, if you do that kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, my youngest daughter, like I said, I mean, she's basically my only child right now. My youngest daughter has so much empathy and compassion. Ever since she was a little girl, she'd see kids without toys, and she'd go in the house and go grab one toy that we just bought her and go give it to that kid because they didn't have anything to play with. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that. That was her. That was 100% her. But I think she learned from us because we've always tried to do things community based, go to missions and serve food on holidays, and took her with us. And so I think a lot of that behavior is learned by example. Mm-hmm. While the flip of that coin, the other side of that coin, is bad behavior and antisocial behavior and addictive behavior is also taught by example. And we've done really, my children have never known me as a drinker. My wife has never known, she has known me. I'm 34 years sober. There's very few people still alive that knew me well back in the day. There's a few. And I pay them money constantly so they won't talk. Just kidding. But seriously, it's that learning through example and osmosis is, I have to say, when you get into, you know, n- you know, nurture versus nature, um, I don't know where you draw the line percentage-wise on that, but I really think nurture has a lot to do with it in most cases, but
Well, your
it's
kids,
it's constantly fighting nature, right?
yeah,
It's your genetic disposition. It's like your daughters, they're very different. My
yeah,
daughters are very different. But your daughters, same mom and same dad. Mine have a different mom. Yours have same mom, same dad, same living experience, right? And why are they different?
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's so much to it, right? I think this, like, setting an example, I think is really important. And you're right, like that compassion, they just kind of emulate what they see you doing. So if you're around, you go to a mission and you serve food and they see that you're interacting with, folks who might be homeless, they might look a bit disheveled. They might look to the kids, they might look a little bit different or scary or
scary,
whatever,
scary.
and they see that, oh, dad's not scared, dad's treating them with respect and empathy. And
Mhm.
um, they learn that, okay, that's a way that I can interact with people that look that way. Kids compartmentalize things, right? I remember vividly the first time I was walking with the kids to swimming lessons. This was, really, it was about a year ago, where someone, asked us for money on the street. Homeless fellow, looked quite, hadn't had a shower in a long time, and probably some mental health issues and stuff, and was a little bit
Sure.
scary looking. But I thought, this is an opportunity for me to, I don't want to teach my kids that, oh, you run and you hide away from them. Sure, I'll give him $1 and ask him how he's doing, and wish him a good day. And the kids talked about that for like a week afterwards. Like, oh, dad, remember when you gave that guy $1? Like, those are such powerful things for them to see. And I think we sometimes underestimate like how long that's going to stick with your kids. And I'm not trying to like talk myself up here. I'm just connecting it to, this conversation that we're having now. It's making me think about that experience. And they just really, those things are so poignant for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, the experiences that you have when you're that age, you don't have many experiences. So that compartmentalizing that compartment, there's not a lot in there.
Yeah.
So anything that's in there looks a lot bigger and a lot more significant than it might be.
Yeah.
But I would argue that that experience of watching their dad show compassion to someone who's having a hard time um, is something that is going to stay with them for a long time. But my my youngest daughter, man, she when she was 9, um, all that border stuff was going on, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
You're talking
it
about
was
like ICE. You're talking
people,
about,
yeah, people getting stuck at the border, and there
yeah.
was like kids there, and there was all this stuff in the news. She came to my wife and I and said, there's all these kids that need toys down at the border, and I've got toys and stuffed animals that I don't play with. And we're like, you got stuff in boxes from years of Christmases that you don't. And she goes, can we give it to them? I'm like, that's a
Wow.
great idea. Sure. I go, why don't you go with mommy and go online and, you guys look, for, or her mom's like, let's look for an organization. And then my daughter had the idea of like, well, I know kids at school and that have toys. And so she on her own, my daughter on her own at 9, went to the head of school, the principal, and said she would like to ask kids if she could do that. And can we put that in the newsletter? And they put out a specific newsletter online and in person. And we had a huge truck full of stuff, and people
Awesome.
were people were buying, toothbrushes and toothpaste and just all this stuff. And, I mean, we live in an upper middle class uh, neighborhood and Montessori school. It's very it's not very economically diverse. It's very racially diverse, very much so, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then, she picked an organization. She went online with my wife and looked at different organizations, and she found this one organization called Border Kindness, and we reached out to the guy, and he's just wonderful. And we drove down to Mexicali with all this stuff, and he took it over the border, and he's since become a friend to me and Vanessa, and he's a sober brother of mine now. And
Incredible.
it's interesting the way one act by anyone, in this case by a child, can just start all this rolling good stuff. And at the same time, you have one guy telling you that, Mexicans are bad people and blah, 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 blah. And instead of appealing to people's better nature and children's better nature, he appeals to their worst nature. And we all have that bad nature. We all have fear. We all have, and it all comes from fear, anger, pain, racism, being a bully. It all comes from fear. And I'm just glad that my daughter and my family are just, we choose love. Love and understanding and compassion.
It's almost as simple as that, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
You talked about the golden rule. It kind of comes back to that same thing. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Put yourself in the other guy's shoes. My mom taught me that when I was really, really young. My mom had grown up in the Depression in Appalachia. Very poor. Very poor. And, I joked that I'm half Greek, half hillbilly. My mom was a full-on hillbilly. And you should see some family pictures of hers growing up, dude. It was some hillbillies. But, my mom, I got to tell you, from growing up in the Deep South, I never, not once, ever heard her use the N-word or ever act like that. And I knew that she didn't grow up around people of color, but in her beliefs and her spiritual system of being a Christian, she treated everybody with love and respect. My mom wasn't a warm, cuddly, fuzzy, touchy-feely kind of person. She wasn't that, but she was inside. She's just an introvert, and I learned from example from her. I learned how to be tenacious from her, how to have perseverance. And even though she was my mom, she was tough as nails, man, tough as nails. And I think I learned a lot of that from her, and I'm very grateful for it.
I read in an interview, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you said something about, I learned how to be a dad from my single mom.
Absolutely.
So what did you learn from her about parenting?
No one will teach a boy how to be a better man than a single mom. What did she teach me? Well, see, my mom, a lot of people who are mistreated by their spouse and go through divorce and stuff will bad talk them, and unfortunately bad talk them to their kids. My mom didn't really do that. Kind of passive aggressively, My mom would be like, she wouldn't be like, oh, your dad needs to pay child support. Well, we're poor because of your father. She never did that. I heard other people's parents do that, but she never did that. She'd be like, well, son, a real man doesn't mistreat his wife, have to leave his family, move to the other side of the country, marry a younger woman, and raises her family. That's not what a real man does. A real man treats his ex-wife with respect, moves down the street, and raises his children. And how can you argue with that?
Yeah.
That's
Again,
what you do.
it's kind of describing that example or setting that example as opposed to talking down about what wasn't done.
Exactly.
You're teaching the right way. You're not just talking about the wrong way, but you're teaching the right way.
You're teaching the right way. You're accentuating the positive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I have always believed that, but if that came from her, would I have believed it without her? Maybe, but I doubt it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know. There's no way of telling. And I'm just grateful for that example and for her saying that. And was she still poking at my dad a little bit passive aggressively? Yeah. But
Well, of
you
course.
know, when you're hurt, you're hurt. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
My mom was not very educated, but boy, she loved her babies. All she ever wanted to do was be a mom and a homemaker. That's all she wanted. It's my older siblings tell me that my mom used to bake cakes and cookies, and she'd meet them at the crosswalk on their way home or walk to school and get them. I'm like, what? My mom worked the whole time I was a kid. I was a latchkey kid.
Yeah.
I grew up in a housing project,
Mhm.
and it wasn't because she didn't want, she couldn't be there for me like that. But so me and my siblings had that kind of juxtaposition, but I think I had it better in the long run because me and my mom, as I got older, we became friends, not just parents, but friends. We got to know each other, and we were just like juxtaposition. She was Fox News, over here. I'm way over here, and but
you found that common ground as
you got to find
adults.
exactly. You got to find common ground. I don't know if you're a student of U.S. political history, but Ronald Reagan was like the first of the neo-modern conservatives. His political foil was a guy named Tip O'Neill, who was from Massachusetts, big man, super liberal Democrat, and he was the Speaker of the House. But even though they were diametrically opposed politically, they had a friendship that they could have, and they got stuff done. They got it done.
Yeah, novel idea, hey?
Right. It looked more Republican than Democrat, but Tip was like holding the line, like, well, I got to have this and this and this, and you can't touch this and this and this, and we got through it. And it's funny, and I've even said this that if he hadn't had Tip O'Neill, I don't know if Reagan would have had the legacy that he had, because it was something that everybody connected to, even if you didn't like him, you connected with him.
There's always a middle ground. Yeah,
there is always a middle ground, and a lot of times it's not right in the middle; it's close to the middle, and that's all you can hope for, But with teaching that to children, to me, is teaching them hope.
Yeah.
If you could teach compromise, not in a bad sense, but in a sense of like, okay, let's work together and concentrate on the things that we agree on before we talk about the things that we don't agree on, and like you said, putting yourself in the other guy's shoes is a great way to approach compromise. As a child, as a young child, as a teenager, as an adolescent, as a young adult, or as an adult, to keep that in mind of like, okay, let's figure this out. How are we going to deal with this? And I love watching kids play when they like your 4-year-old is still kind of doing what we call parallel play, where like she'll have play dates with friends, but they're not really playing together. They're playing near each other. You ever watch that?
Yep, I agree with you. Yep.
Well, it's socialization 101. When you get to like 6, 5, 6, and especially 7, they start working on things together.
Right.
And that's where friends like usually get their best friends, is in 5, 6, 7. And it's funny because my daughter started going to the school here in Pasadena when she was 3, and this girl Shelby was there, and they were kind of friends, but something clicked when they were 5 years old, and they've been inseparable ever since for 10 years.
Yeah.
And they couldn't be more diametrically opposed. My daughter's a little, very petite white girl, barely 5 foot. Shelby is 5'11", beautiful black girl, African American girl, and she's an introvert. My daughter's an extrovert, and I am telling you, they are fiercely, even though they'll argue like old married people.
Yeah.
They're they fiercely love each other. And if you attack one, you attack both.
Yeah.
Brother, watch out.
You've made me really think about compromise now. I'm kind of thinking about that now too. Like, okay, we need to teach our kids how to learn how to compromise. That's one of the most important things, I think. Like, you live in a world that's not always going to go your way, right? So you've got to either find the positive, find some common ground, whatever it is, to move forward. But now I'm kind of thinking about it too, in the sense of our relationship with our own kids. Because this is something I really struggle with, is, dad knows what's right. This is what you should do. Let's do it this way. Listen to me. And though that is important, but I find that some of where you really get somewhere with kids is when you can kind of, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I understand this is what you want.
You want more candy. I get it. I want more candy.
Yeah.
It's not good for you.
Yeah. So exactly. And so that's where is that how we teach it? Is that how we model it? We've talked so much about modeling. Is it like building that in the home? Because you always hear these stories of people. It's like, my dad ruled with an iron fist, and then, the kid gets a bit older and they kind of move the other direction totally, because they never got to see that compromise and get to see that kind of working together. There's kind of a couple ways to do it. And I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I guess you've just got me thinking about how important is compromise and middle ground in your relationship with your child.
I think it's huge. And I'm very grateful to my wife for helping me with that, because I used to come from the idea that a parent of someone that age, especially a younger age, should be a loving and compassionate dictator, because that's what my mom was. This is the way it was going to be. This was the curfew. This is what you were expected to do, and I understand that. And I understand that as a parent. And I think I have made the mistake in the past of being too stringent.
Me too.
And I'm not talking about, like abusive or mean, and even the way you said it. No, I think we should do it this way, but you're really basically saying you're going to do it this way, right?
Yeah.
You're putting shiny, happy speak on it for the babies. And, and I get that, but the thing is, they get it too. Yeah. They know what you're doing, even if you don't think they do. Mm-hmm. And because they can read between the lines when they're really young. When you say no, that's a wall. And there's times when it's like my mom would get so frustrated with me as a kid. It was just, but why not? Why can't we? Why blah, 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 blah? And she would say something to me that I hated, and I swore I'd never say to my kids, because I said so. Why? Yeah. Because I said so. And end of story. And I'm like, if I ever have children, I'll never say that. Right. Yeah. There's times when, like, man, look, I'm all cool with like negotiating with you, but you're not getting the point after about 10 minutes of the same conversation. We're done.
Yeah. You put a period at the end of that sentence.
We're done. We're done. Why? Because I said so. because daddy said so.
Yeah,
That's the way
it's an
gonna
art
be.
and not a science, right? Like certain situations, like I always tell my kids, like there's going to be times you're going to hear daddy raise his voice, and the only times that's going to happen is when I'm worried about your safety, right? So, sometimes it's like, they're playing with something outside and I'm worried they're going to get cut or whatever, and my voice will raise, and they'll say like, oh, daddy raised his voice. There are times when you need to, it's like, I do know what's better and I'm just going to intervene here. But there's other times when you have to get them involved in that shared decision making, whether they really are involved or whether it's just you're giving them the opportunity to voice their input. And it's so hard. I mean, I really do think it's an art, but it's important, I think, for us to just model that, for them to see that, hey, I'm not going to be a complete dictator, like you said. I'm going to involve you in this. Like, we make this decision together, and I'll explain to you why it's important to me. It's a little tough with a 3-4-year-old, right? But
yeah, it's almost impossible with a 3 or 4-year-old. But I mean, the main thing is like, how far you're willing to go. You and your wife know how far, where opinion ends and safety begins. It's like, no, you can't eat all that candy. No, you can't stay up that late.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because the times you have stayed up that late, you had a hard time in school the next day. That's why. And if you can give them examples like that, it's kind of hard for them to argue.
That's right.
And that's been my experience. Instead of back in the day, especially with my older daughter, I'd be like, because you can't. All right, that's just it. Trust me. I'm looking out for you. I know what's best for you. I'm doing this for your own good.
I've been here before. I know.
Yeah. It starts sounding like that old punk rock song, Institutionalized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and okay, so speaking of, well, maybe to pick up on that punk rock theme a little bit, this is the Rad Dads show. I have to ask you, do you consider yourself a rad dad?
Well, now, yeah, I think so. You mean radical or just rad in a way of like cool?
Well, both. I guess I'm going to ask you, I'm going to flip it back to you. So I've said this on the show lots of times. Like, obviously the, rad dad, that has a nice ring to it. For us, we talk to lots of people we think are rad. Okay. So musicians and things like that. And so there's kind of that side of things. There's radical, which is also, maybe you have sort of different views on things. You approach things differently. Or maybe it's just like, what's a good dad? Or maybe it's all of them all together. Like, I guess I'm curious, if I ask you to define what's a rad dad, how do you define that? What's important to you?
I think it's all the above. Yeah. I think it's all the above. When me and my wife meet, or I meet people who are, I think, good parents, it fills me with joy to know that especially fathers. Ever since Father of Mine came out, abandonment has been an issue that, boy, it transcends ethnic lines, economic lines, racial lines, what have you, gender specific lines. Doesn't matter. I got a friend whose child is their partner was the children of 2 women, and they still had issues. Everybody has issues.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can raise your kid to be as woke as possible, and they're going to have issues with that and with everything else, because they're human. That's what's wonderful about it, is that the genetics and socialization, you put them together, man, you might be making a delicious meal or a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
You have no idea, you know.
I love that.
You know, and yeah, man, it's a crapshoot with the genetics. Sometimes it's like, oh,
Yeah.
ADHD. Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the things
Um,
to you that are qualities that you appreciate in a parent that maybe you try to emulate as a parent? And maybe that's changed over time. I'm sure it has, as now you're a parent of an adult too.
it changes. It evolves. I like to think it evolves. I just like people um, are just who try. A lot of parents don't even try. They just do it. You know, back when we were, well, I'm older than you, but back when I was a kid, most parents, not most, but a lot of parents back then didn't want to be parents. They did it because they were told that that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
They were lulled along believing it. Now, one of the things about most parents that you meet, they have children because they want those children. That's wonderful. I wanted both of my children were conceived and born in love. And that's just a great way to start. And if you're not, you're battling from the beginning. And it's an uphill climb. It's an uphill climb anyway. I mean, it's a hard world, man.
Yeah.
It's just it's not easy to be a parent. It's not easy to be a kid. It's not easy. Life isn't easy sometimes. No matter how much money you have, there's always going to be pressure. There's always going to be tension. There's always going to be drama. Always.
I was going to just quickly ask if you've got 5 more minutes here. You mentioned your MS diagnosis a few years ago, and I know you've talked pretty openly about that. You released a statement on the website for the band, and I did some press and kind of explaining what that was all about. I'm curious what that discussion was like with your kids.
Well, my eldest daughter didn't know how to deal with it. She just needed to process it, and she's still processing it. We don't talk very much. But my youngest daughter, she was 9, I guess. Let's see, 7 years ago, and she's 15, so 8, 7 going on 8 when I got diagnosed. Actually, 7. She was 7, and I told her that Daddy has a disease, but that I am going to be okay as long as I take my medicine and I exercise and I eat the right things. So we're going to have to change a little bit of the way we eat at home. And she was like, okay. I didn't tell her everything about it. An 8-year-old doesn't need to know that. As she got older, she would learn about stuff and she would ask me questions, and just she learned more and accepted more as she got older, because their brain synapses are just firing off like a billion a day or something like that, and you need those to learn, to have space to learn and to process. And I think we did it the best we could, of just telling her there was an issue. And then she would ask, well, is that why you have a hard time walking sometimes? I'm like, yeah, baby, that's why. And she would ask questions as time went on. And now she's 15 and she pretty much knows the deal. And I know she's gone online and looked at MS, and I think she's seen where it could go.
Yeah. Scary for a kid. Yep. It's scary for you, I'm sure.
Scary for me. It's scary for everybody, man.
Yeah.
When I first found out and they told me, and I walked to my car, I called my wife and we both started crying. It was scary, man. I didn't know what multiple sclerosis was. But by the time I got home, my wife had my computer, her computer, my daughter's iPad. Looked like she was trying to hack into Fort Knox or something.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, we got this, baby. This is not going to kill you. We got this. There's protocols you can take. You're going to be good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
And obviously, so, you guys are busy right now, busy this summer with the band. You're feeling okay. You're feeling good. Things are.
I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Some days are better than others.
Yeah.
Yesterday was a little rough physically, but today is better. And I know that I can go. I just have to do what I have to do. I have to finish working out. I have to go swimming. I have to, my memory sometimes kind of isn't as good as it should be. I don't know if that's from the MS. It could be from just the age and just the fact that I did copious amounts of drugs and alcohol when I was younger. It could be a little bit of everything. So I've learned to really like use my calendars, like pack this here at this time, do this, call this person at this time. And the more I do it, the more I don't need to do that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just the cognitive thing. I have to work at it. I can't sit around eating bad food, smoking, drinking, doing drugs. And that's where a lot of people get into trouble and they end up progressing at a young age.
Yeah.
It's constant. You're constantly just trying to keep it at bay. That's what the drugs do. I take a drug that's a neuromoderator, not a neurosuppressant. If this ever gets bad and becomes progressive, secondary or primary progressive, they'll put me on a drug that's basically like chemo. It just shuts down the immune system. Mine keeps my immune system intact, but keeps the white blood cells and the platelets that carry the MS to my brain. So it allows my immune system to heal. Will it ever heal? No, it's a chronic disease. I'll have it till I die. I'll die with it. I won't die from it.
Yeah. I like that message of hope too, and your perseverance, your dedication to your family, to your health. Again, going way back to some of the adversity you faced as a child. You're 34 years sober. You've accomplished a lot, and the band is, it's like never been hotter. It feels like you guys are busy this summer. Tell me a little bit about what's happening this summer with the band.
Well, actually, not this summer. This fall, we're releasing a live record, Live at the Whiskey A Go-Go, which we recorded last December. And it's a double live record. And I grew up in the 70s, so that's pretty cool for me. And it sounds great. It's raw, it's rough, but it sounds really good. And it's great performances, a lot of energy. We're going on a tour in September as well with the band Ataris.
Yep.
And the band The Peak Spiders out of Nashville. Great band. Two great bands. Going to make a video for a song. It's a live album, but it's got 2 recorded tracks on it, bonus tracks. One is a song that we released last year called Year of the Tiger. And then the new one is a song that I originally recorded on my solo record, acoustically, but on this it's Everclear. It's full on big guitars and drums, and it's called Sing Away, and it's about teen suicide.
Okay. So you guys, you've got a lot coming up this year. You're playing some festival shows this summer, and we're going to see you in Edmonton in about a week, which is really exciting for me. So really looking forward to that. Art, I really want to thank you for your time today and for coming on the Rad Dad Show, sharing your thoughts and your experiences as a parent. I think you've left us with a bit of a hopeful message and lots of good things to think about. I feel like I could pick your brain for a long time. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay.